Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining Mastering Reading with Orton-Gillingham. I'm Jess Arce, and I'm so pleased to have you participate in this webinar today. If you are watching it on a replay, please do hashtag replay, and so I can know that you've watched it, and also it will help other people be able to see the video when the tags are done. So this month is Dyslexia Awareness Month. And thanks to the diligent hard work of one mom in Texas, there is also a Dysgraphia Awareness Day, which passed, I think it was October 3rd. And we are finding that people are learning more and more about dyslexia. And so I'm so excited that you are here today to learn more about Orton-Gillingham. Today, we'll be talking about what dyslexia is, I am, why I'm an expert, why you should listen to what I have to say, what Orton-Gillingham instruction is, the principles, the benefits, and then we will go into any Q&As if anyone has any questions about Orton-Gillingham. So what is dyslexia? Dyslexia is a specific learning disability that affects reading, spelling, and communication in relationship to language-based processing skills. It is characterized by difficulties with accurate and fluent word recognition, poor spelling, and decoding abilities. It is not difficulty with reversals. So many people come to me and they say, oh yeah, I know what dyslexia is. It's when you switch around your letters. That is not what dyslexia is. Dyslexia is difficulty with words. So that's really important to know because I have run into a lot of parents who didn't get their kids the help they needed when they were younger because their child did not reverse. I had one student, she was 18 years old when she started working with us, and her brother got help many years earlier because he reversed, and the sister never got any help. So it's very important to understand reversals is something different. And I have videos on what reversals are. So if you want to know what reversals are, watch one of those YouTube videos. I'm not going to spend time today talking about getting into that. So about me, my name is Jess Arce, and I am the founder and the director of 3D Learning Experts. And I am a best-selling author. My book, I Am Not Dumb, I Am Dyslexic. I wrote it for parents of kids with dyslexia to read. And it's an easy read because you might be dyslexic, and I want it to be something that you can digest. There is a book that is very well known, and it was written by Sally Shayward. That's her last name. And I could never read her darn book. It was huge. And it was just very scientific, very difficult to understand. So I wanted to make an easy to read book. And if you stay to the end, I will tell you how you can get a copy of that book for free. Okay. So that's my gift to you for watching my entire webinar. Although your biggest gift is learning about Orton-Gillingham and dyslexia, but that's just an extra one that you can is tangible and would benefit you and your family. So I'm also the host of the Learning Disabilities Experts podcast and YouTube channel. And that podcast is in its third year. And I started it in the hopes to help parents learn about different learning disabilities. We're now kind of shifting a little and focusing more on dyslexia, but there are plenty of interviews and people who have talked about different types of neurodiversities in our library of videos and podcasts wherever you like to listen to podcasts. So I myself am dyslexic. I was not diagnosed with dyslexia. As a child, I was told I had a reading disability. And it wasn't until I started tutoring my own kids that I discovered that my reading disability truly was dyslexia. I got held back in third grade because I couldn't read. And then I received the right type of instructions the second time around in third grade. And then I learned how to read that year. And I was actually skipped to the right grade. So I know what it's like to be dyslexic myself. I married a dyslexic man who has very profound dyslexia, severe dyslexia. Mine is more moderate. he had a very different experience, different upbringing, didn't get any help until I started tutoring him 9 years ago. And at that point, he was not able to pass his mortgage exam. And he had been a mortgage lender for like 15 years, or maybe not quite that long at that point, but he had been a mortgage lender for years. And then they started requiring mortgage lenders to take a test. And he was not able to read on an 8th grade reading level, which is what most statewide tests are given on as an 8th grade reading level, because the average American graduates high school on an 8th grade reading level. So that's pretty much where they gauge or set most tests reading at. And that's also what community college level is at. And so, since both my husband and I are dyslexic, it turned out that 3 of our 4 children also have dyslexia, pretty severe for 2 of them. One of them is moderate, and the other one, interestingly enough, doesn't have any dyslexia, was reading on an 8th grade level by 2nd grade. That's my oldest one. However, he has some of the characteristics of dyslexia. And my 4 children combined have a total of 9 neurodiversities. So I'm very versed in neurodiversities. It's been years of experience, personal experience. My kids are all grown now, and then becoming educated as time went on since 2012 to learn more about the neurodiversities. And I'm a former educator. I started off a preschool teacher, and that's when I realized my daughter wasn't quite up to par, and I couldn't figure out why. And it literally took 10 years, and us moving to Texas, to find out my daughter had dyslexia. And all of a sudden, it just it it gave us the answers we had been searching for years as to why my very bright child could not spell words like cat and dog. Um, and so that was such a blessing to have moved to Texas, and we lived there for 8 years, 9 years. And while we were there, my daughter received Orton-Gillingham instruction in school, and then my youngest son was diagnosed with dyslexia as well, and he received Orton-Gillingham instruction for 1 year, and then we were moving back west, and so my son's dyslexia teacher said, you need to learn how to teach him, and that is literally how I ended up where I am today. And then I'm a retired homeschool mom. So when we left Texas, I started homeschooling. Well, actually, my last year in Texas, I started homeschooling one of my kids. When we left Texas, I started homeschooling my youngest 2 children. And then within 2 years, I was homeschooling all 3 of my kids who have dyslexia. So my only child who ever really fit into traditional school and learning structure was my oldest son. And the other 3 really struggled a lot for various reasons, academically, socially, emotionally. So that's why I started homeschooling. And I highly recommend homeschooling if that's an option, if it's something you have ever thought about, but don't feel like you're capable of doing. I have a program, it's a video series that hopefully will give parents the confidence to homeschool their kids. I've interviewed almost a dozen parents who are homeschool parents or were homeschool parents, and they do different types of homeschooling. So it can really give you a good idea of what the options are out there and give you the confidence to be able to homeschool your child. You don't need to be an educator to homeschool your child. You are your child's best teacher. So, learning challenges associated with dyslexia, there's a large number of them, and they can vary from person to person. So my family of dyslexics, with my husband, my 3 kids, my mother, myself, when we used to sit down at the dinner table, all of us together when the kids were growing up, I used to say, like, we all have different characteristics of dyslexia. Um, Pretty much spelling touches everyone with dyslexia. There might be someone who has dyslexia and does not struggle with spelling. However, that is the one commonality I have pretty much experienced. The other characteristics vary from person to person. Some have directional issues. Some have challenges with reading. Some can read well. Some have reversal issues. Most have reading fluency and accuracy issues. Spelling, writing, getting your thoughts out on paper, phonological awareness and decoding of words, slow processing speed. That's one of the characteristics that I was saying. My one son, who was reading on an 8th grade level in 2nd grade, who is not dyslexic, he is still a slow reader. So it's interesting how that carried over genetically, even though none of the other dyslexic characteristics did. Trouble organizing thoughts, trouble keeping your bedroom organized or your backpack or your desk. My desk is my biggest challenge to keep organized. And, all of these challenges start leading to anxiety, social anxiety, academic anxiety, not understanding why they're not able to perform like their classmates. Most individuals with dyslexia are very intelligent and they don't understand why they are more intelligent than maybe Joe Schmo next at the desk next to them, but they can't read. And Joe Schmo is moving right along as expected with reading. So it really becomes a traumatic experience if not intervened early on when they're in traditional school. One of the things I found, which is not as common to find anymore, was dyslexic people have a lot of difficulty tying their shoelaces. So I don't even know if kids are being taught how to tie shoelaces anymore. But if you are teaching your child and you find that that's really hard for them, that's another common trait associated with dyslexia. So Orton-Gillingham program was created by Dr. Orton and Ms. Gillingham. Dr. Orton was a neurologist and a psychiatrist, and he pioneered the field of dyslexia. He changed the name from what it used to be to dyslexia, which dyslexia means difficulty with words. Dys means not or difficult, and lexia means words. And he conducted extensive research in the areas of reading difficulties. And actually, before he met Ms. Gillingham, he partnered with another gentleman who started a boys' boarding school back in the 1920s for young men who were struggling with reading and spelling. And they created a program similar to the Orton-Gillingham program. And I just interviewed the head of that school, which is now a boarding school for males and females. But it just blows my mind that programs have been in place since the 1920s. And here we are in the 2020s, and it's not commonplace. You would think that by now they would have these services available to all students in school, but that's not the case. Anyway, Anna Gillingham was an educator and a psychologist, and she also dedicated her life work to helping individuals with learning challenges, particularly dyslexia. And the two of them met in New York at the university. And so they put their expertise together and they came up with the Orton-Gillingham program, which has been in place for about 90 years. So it was about the 1930s when they started to create the Orton-Gillingham program. And there are lots of programs today that have an Orton-Gillingham foundation. Not all programs are created equal. So just because something is Orton-Gillingham based does not mean that it's the best. It just means they use some of the principles from what Dr. Orton and Ms. Gillingham created. They worked very diligently to create their program, which is still in place in the 1930s. So Orton-Gillingham programs are systematic, they're structured, they are now they're researched, they're proven to work well to teach a dyslexic person who, like myself or my daughter, could not read or spell. And then in a matter of no time, we can become successful readers and spellers because of the systems they've created. So I can only speak the program that I use, and that's the Barton Reading and Spelling Program. And I've been using that program for 14 years. It's now been around probably about 32 years, because when I started, it was about 18 years old. And that program we start with sounds. And so when a student comes to my program, we first do an assessment to determine where their struggles are. Some students need to spend a lot of time working on sounds because they just don't hear the sounds correctly. My husband was one of them. Like I said, I tutored him when he was in his 40s, and we had to start working on sounds, and we spent a good deal of time doing that, because if you can't say the sounds correctly, you're not going to be able to read words correctly. So it's really important to build a strong foundation. And that is the goal of the Orton-Gillingham program, is to build a strong foundation so that the student can then be independent and not have to rely on tutors and teachers for the rest of their lives. So the first thing is sounds. From there, then we start working on just short vowel sounds. And so this is an example. The colors of the consonants and the vowels are different. Also, the color of a prefix or suffix is different, and the color of a unit is different. So that helps the individual to remember visually what the word will look like, and also help them to remember what's a vowel, because a lot of times I have found that our students don't know, they can't remember which is a vowel and which is a consonant. And the word consonant is very long and arduous. So like this word is cut, right? And so they would spend the first couple of books just working on the short vowel sound. And then they're going to add in the long vowel sound into book 3. And so now silent E is not a long vowel sound. I mean, it's silent. So that actually doesn't get introduced until book 6. But so they would start to learn longer words and learn how to break apart the word. So we give them tricks and tips to help them remember. Like the happy rule helps you remember that there's 2 P's, 2 consonants in the middle, and you split them in half so that the first consonant makes the short vowel sound and the second consonant will make a long vowel sound. And we also teach them about the Y, and when Y makes an E sound and when Y makes an I sound. We teach them what when the C makes a sound and when the C makes a sound. Teach them about watch out vowels or watch out vowels. You know, they start doing physical activities to help them remember, because dyslexic individuals, and all students actually, really thrive from having the having multi-sensory activities involved in their learning. It makes it easier to remember. So here, the word cute is a silent E. Now, most kindergarten books have silent E words in them. However, we don't introduce silent E's until much later, because silent E's are a very difficult process to understand. So we don't want to introduce it at the beginning of our program. We want to wait until they have a very strong foundation. So think of it like a high-rise building. If you have a skyscraper and you don't dig out a basement for that skyscraper is going to tumble and fall when there's a really strong wind or a tornado or an earthquake. So we want the same thing. We want to build a strong structure so that when the student has a hard time, or if they're taking a test, they don't crumble and forget everything they've learned. So we also teach prefixes and suffixes, and each prefix and suffix has a meaning. So when the student knows the meaning of the prefix and the suffix, they have less to remember about the word. So ness is the quality of. So cuteness, you can remember, is the quality of being cute. Okay, so the principles of Orton-Gillingham. Number 1, it's multisensory. So we explain what the student is going to be learning. We have tiles that move on the computer screen, because we do online tutoring only. So When we used to do in-person tutoring, we had tiles that the student would move with on the table, but now the student can move it on the screen. And if they have the touch screen, they are literally moving it with their finger. If they don't have a touch screen, they are moving it with their mouse. So either way, it's kinesthetic. They are moving it. They're listening to their tutor or their parent instructing them of what to do. And then they are repeating back what they heard. Because I'm sure you've heard, um, you know, being able to teach something to someone means you know it. And so we want to make sure that our students can explain back to us what they have learned. And so that is the three parts of hearing, speaking, and touching. And when they are doing our program, they learn the lesson, and then they are going to spell spell a word, and then they're going to read a word, and then they are going to write out phrases, and then they're going to read phrases, and then they're going to write out sentences, and then they're going to read sentences. And then once they get to level 3, they're going to start reading stories. So they're not quite ready for stories until level 3, but every level that they go onto, the story only has words that they have learned. So silent E's don't get introduced into any stories until level 6. And structured and systematic and sequential. I mean, that's what I've been talking about this whole time. That is the pillar of Orton-Gillingham. It is structured and sequential. It is not just everything's thrown out there and you hope the child catches it like it is in school. They learn as they go, and they repeat. They continue to repeat to make sure that they remember the information they learned. And it's an intense instruction with ample practice, because dyslexic people, again, everyone can benefit from this, but especially dyslexic people, repetition, repetition, repetition. That is the key component for anything you do for your dyslexic child, is repetition. Now, it's helpful for the repetition to be the type of process that works best for a dyslexic person, because when my daughter was in school and she was struggling to learn her multiplication facts, her teachers told me just have her practice her math facts, do speed tests, do speed tests. Well, we practiced them over and over again, but it never helped her to repeat that, because that process was not an ideal process for a dyslexic person, because dyslexic people often struggle with multiplication because it's very arbitrary. And so it just doesn't make sense to them. Again, I have a video on that if you want to learn more about that. So it's direct, it's explicit instruction. And what that means is we're not adding in a lot of fluff. We're just telling them what they need to know. And actually, with my tutors, I encourage them to speak as little with as few words as possible, because if you talk too much, the dyslexic person tends to not be able to remember all of the details. And so systematic, it follows a system, and it's very important that you don't skip around in the program, that you start from the beginning and you continue through the program, because it needs to build on itself. And then it's synthetic and analytic, provide immediate feedback to the individuals to correct their errors, and so that they can analyze the mistakes that they have made, and not spend time thinking that what they did wrong was right and then remembering that. So instead, we want to make sure that they remember the correct information. So the benefits of Orton-Gillingham, individualized is definitely the most important. The best way to offer an Orton-Gillingham instruction. My kids received their instruction in a group setting, and they did benefit from it. However, like I said, my daughter did an Orton-Gillingham based program at school in Texas. But when I started tutoring my youngest son, when we moved away, I actually found that the program we were using was so much more it had so much more information, and it was so much more beneficial. My son was making so much more progress than my daughter did in her group setting, that I made my daughter start tutoring with me in ninth grade. And so the individualized instruction is really important for several reasons. One, because very often your dyslexic child is embarrassed. They don't want to tell a group of people that they don't understand what something means. So in regular class, they typically will not speak up. They won't say that they're struggling to understand something. And very often that can continue in the small group setting as well, because they still don't want to be the dumbest one in the group, right? They don't want anyone to know that they didn't understand. Maybe the whole group didn't understand, but no one wants to speak up. So in a one-on-one setting, the student knows that the tutor is there to support them, and they build a relationship so that they have the confidence to ask questions if they don't understand. So that's, I think, the most important reason for one-on-one, but the other two reasons are very important too. If a student is absent, the class should not move forward, because the person who's absent is going to miss. And if that happens, like I said, it's sequential. So we can't have one person missing out on something. So if someone's out sick for a week, or I had mononucleosis as a kid, I was out of school for a whole month. If that's the case, the whole class has to wait for that student to come back. Or if they don't wait, that student will have fallen behind and will now not be able to catch up, and they'll have a gap. So that's kind of 2 and 3 together right there. Orton-Gillingham instruction builds confidence and self-esteem. I often tell parents, you may not see an improvement in your child the first month. However, you will see their confidence go up. We had one student, the mom told me that she saw a change in her son after the first week of tutoring. And that's because after usually years of having different tutors and teachers helping them after school, and aides and different people working with the child, that is making no difference. After years of that, in just 1 or 2 tutoring sessions, our students can tell that this is different, and that they are not dumb, and that they do have hope that they themselves have probably lost, and very often hope that we as parents lose, because we're just like, oh, my kid's never going to get it. But they can. They truly can when they are doing an Orton-Gillingham based program. And as I mentioned earlier on, it's long-term success. This is not just a band-aid on the problem. It's not homework help. It's not just, let's just get through this. This is lifelong. My youngest son, he had severe dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia. He had vision processing disorder. He had auditory processing delay. He had, he's on the autism spectrum. He's got all these neurodiversities. And to be honest, I didn't know if he was going to be able to be independent and learn the skills he needed. I homeschooled him, and he still struggled for years. Well, not years, but the first year I homeschooled him, we put him in a group setting, and it was a multi-sensory setting, but he wasn't able to learn like the other kids. And that was like 4th grade. And now he's in college and he's working independently. And yes, he has accommodations in place if he needs them. However, he is able to read on an 11th grade reading level. And he is able to use a note thing to help him take notes, because that's still a little bit of a challenge for him, the writing portion. But I mean, what he learned in 4th through 7th grade when I tutored him, well, I tutored him 4th and 5th grade, and then I had one of my tutors start tutoring him, because it's hard to work with your own child. But anyway, what he learned stuck with him. And so when I had him tested in 10th grade, he tested on an 11th grade reading level, above what the average American graduates high school reading on. So if that's not like lifelong change, I don't know what is. So these are some testimonials from this one. The first one you're going to hear is one of our students who just graduated. This person, Koi, graduated high school, public school on a 3rd grade reading level. And at the end of 2 years of tutoring us, is reading on an 11th grade reading levels.
This whole entire program has been really beneficial and absolutely life-changing for a dyslexic person like myself or a neurodivergent person like myself. And I've talked to Mr. Chris about this, the teacher that was teaching me. He does a phenomenal job. He really does. I would definitely like to go to college and definitely just slow grind, just get that out of the way, be able to like use these like tricks and teachable lessons from Mr. Chris and from your amazing program, that it's going to help me continue on with my life and continue using those resources and using those lessons in everyday life, even just from trying to figure out how to spell a word to how to properly pronounce a word, that for saying words to reading. Like, I can already tell that my reading ability has skyrocketed. And Mr. Chris has said that as well. He said, I've seen the progress and I've seen like the spots where you're missing, and I'm seeing where you're building up and seeing where you're going. And he told me that I'm doing a phenomenal job. And I adore and I love those kind of teachers that really like tell their students, be like, you're doing a great job, or you need help here, you need help there. I am here to help you.
And up next is one of our moms who has been with us for a good couple of years. Her daughter is a twin. The other daughter didn't have any reading challenges. So how hard can you imagine that would be? Like, your twin who looks like you and has so many mannerisms and traits that you have can read really well and you can't. And Catherine is a speech pathologist herself. And so we're so grateful that she entrusted her daughter to us. And so let's listen to what she has to say.
As a parent, I can't give enough shout outs to your company. Gosh, my daughter's diagnosed with dyslexia, and she just adores her tutor, Miss T. And I have to say, like, I had been referred to Lexia learners, and my first phone call was with Miss Jess. And Jess, you were so patient, and you spent almost like an hour with me on the phone, just going through all the questions. And our family just adores your company, and we've been with you for years now, I think now, and we'll stay in for the long haul. I adore you guys. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Catherine. That's so sweet of you. And finally, our third person is Melody, and she is the mom of a homeschooled son who was, I think, 18 or 19 when he started tutoring with us. And so let's listen to her.
Thank you for all the wonderful work you've done with my son. I really appreciate that.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Well, I think this has been a big success story for him, because all I hear is good things and I see good things. I'm really very, very grateful to you. And you obviously have the knowledge to deal with these disabilities, and that's very important. And, they don't always want to, spell out the difficulties that they have, but they're quite severe, and so then sometimes that creates avoidance behavior. So I'm really glad that you've gotten through to him.
I'm glad too. That's great.
Of course, her son had wonderful experience as well, and he now is on his own, living with his girlfriend. He's moved out of his parents' house, and so we're just so proud of all of our students and their dedication, and the parents who are dedicated to making sure that their kids are armed with the tools that they need to be successful adults, whether that's going to college or trade school or being done with traditional education, but being able to successfully pass tests in order to, progress in their chosen careers, because most careers will require some sort of exam in order to move on. So in conclusion, Orton-Gillingham is by far the best choice for a dyslexic person to be able to learn. There are a lot of different options out there, and I don't want to put down any other types of programs, but some of them just, they will market that they help dyslexic students, but truly they do not. Programs that expect the student to do 16 hours a week of instruction is in my opinion ludicrous, because dyslexic people have memory issues, and so 16 hours a week of focusing on their challenges is just, their brain becomes boggled down and overwhelmed, and it's just too much information too fast. And so, you know, it's important to make sure, if you are hiring a tutor, to make sure that they are using the Orton-Gillingham program correctly. And I just talked to a grandma who, her grandchild that she is homeschooling, they were given a curriculum, and she hired a tutor to use said curriculum, and her son didn't make any progress. So like I said, not all Orton-Gillingham programs are created equal. It's really important to do your homework before purchasing a program. And no, it's not cheap. But you know, college isn't really obtainable if they don't have the skills they need. So it's really important. I feel like it's really important to get them those early foundational things, skills developed, and you know, and then maybe they can get scholarships later on, and that would make college less expensive, you know, kind of switch it off. And of course, we provide Orton-Gillingham based instruction online, so it doesn't matter where you are in the country, we can help. And this is our contact information. You can schedule a consultation call with me, and I would be happy to talk to you personally about what's going on. If you're not sure if your child is dyslexic, that's the first step, you know, and they don't need to be officially diagnosed. When you sign up for the consultation, you're going to fill out a form, and that right there is a huge indicator for myself, and often the parent filling out the form, about whether their child is dyslexic, or has dysgraphia or dyscalculia, or scotopic syndrome. And very often when parents fill out their form, they realize that they too are dyslexic. And so you can schedule a consultation call with me. You can send us an email if you have any questions. If you want to visit our website and learn more, you can, and also get links to our videos and our blog articles. Ultimately, my goal is to educate people as to what dyslexia is and how to go about getting the help you need. And if it's not dyslexia, if I can, steer you in the right direction for your child to get the help they need. As I promised, I will be giving away a digital copy of my book. So I will put that in the chat for you to be able to access your digital copy for staying till the end of our webinar. Thank you.